12th of September. It is 8:30 in the morning, and I'm your host, Rich Benfield, still standing in for Stephen Ridgway. Headlines: We have Metastealer malware targets Apple macOS in recent attacks. We have Iranian hackers backdoor 34 orgs with new sponsor malware. MGM Resorts shuts down IT systems after a cyber attack. Google fixes another Chrome zero-day bug. Facebook Messenger phishing wave targets 100,000 business accounts per week. Microsoft is going to block third-party printer drivers and Windows updates. And Cuba ransomware group unleashes undetectable malware. So, to the top of the news. Metastealer malware targets Apple macOS in recent attacks. There's a new information stealer malware called Metastealer, and it has its sights set on Apple macOS, making it the latest in a growing list of Stealer families focused on that operating system after Stealer, Pureland, Atomic Stealer, and RealST. Threat actors are proactively targeting macOS businesses by posing as fake clients in order to socially engineer victims into launching malicious payloads, SentinelOne security researcher Phil Stokes said. In these attacks, Metastealer is distributed in the form of rogue application bundles in the disk image format. That's your standard DMG files, with targets approached through threat actors posing as prospective design clients in order to share a password-protected zip file containing that DMG file. Other instances have involved the malware masquerading as Adobe files or installers for Photoshop. Evidence gathered so far shows that Metastealer artifacts began appearing in the wild in March 2023. The most recent sample was uploaded to VirusTotal on August 27th. So it's still very much active, still very much doing the rounds. So the quote here says that this specific targeting of business users is somewhat unusual for macOS malware, which is more commonly found being distributed via torrent sites or suspicious third-party software distributors, as cracked versions of business productivity or other software. Well, here's the thing. Yesterday's cyber briefing talked about design companies who run huge, great GPUs being attacked for the purposes of forcing or hijacking their systems for cryptocurrency mining. So this isn't the sort of first instance we've seen that this low-level targeting approach from threat actors. I would suggest that this is a new trend. I mean, we've had 2 articles in 2 days that have a very similar approach targeted to businesses based on a niche. So, I would say this is possibly a trend going forward, that this is what we're going to start to see more of. So, the usual rules apply. For those of you that say macOS doesn't have viruses, macOS doesn't have malware, I don't need to run antivirus. We've heard that shtick for 20 odd years. Get yourself some antivirus on there, along with mobile device management, MFA stuff on all your accounts, all the usual things that Windows users have had to do for decades, because you are being targeted, okay? You can't put your head in the sand and say that you have such a small user base that you're not going to be targeted for malware anymore, because it's a thing. Next up, we have Iranian hackers backdoor 34 orgs with new sponsor malware. So this is a nation-state threat actor known as Charming Kitten. You might have seen them around, being mentioned on quite a few of the cybersecurity news sites over the last few months or so. But this Charming Kitten is APT 35 and 42. They've been observed deploying a previously unknown backdoor malware named Sponsor against 34 companies around the globe. One of the notable features of the Sponsor backdoor is that it hides its otherwise innocuous configuration files on the victim's disk so they can be discreetly deployed by malicious batch scripts, successfully evading detection. The campaign was identified by ESET researchers, and it spanned between March 2021 and June 2022, targeting government and healthcare orgs and firms engaged in financial services, engineering, manufacturing, technology, law, telecommunications, and more. The most targeted countries in the campaign observed by ESET are Israel, Brazil, and the UAE. So, ESET reports that Charming Kitten primarily exploited CVE 2021-26855, which is a Microsoft Exchange remote code execution vulnerability, to gain initial access to its target's networks. From there, the hackers used various open source tools that facilitate data exfiltration, system monitoring, network infiltration, etc., and also help the attackers maintain access to the compromised computers. So the sponsor backdoor was written in C++ and creates a service upon launch as instructed by the config file, which also contains encrypted command and control server addresses, C2 contacting intervals, and the RC4 decryption key. The malware gathers system information like the OS build, power source, and sends it to C2 via port 80, receiving a node ID back, which is written back to the config file. And then it enters a loop where it contacts the C2 in time intervals, again defined by this config file, to acquire commands for execution on the host. So it actually is your typical C2 type malware. It has probably a core set of about 8 or so commands it can run, which can be everything from executing a specified command and reporting results back to the C2 server, or downloading and runs files via Windows API and again reports back to C2. And so it can do quite a few things. It's only affected 34 businesses so far, but it's state sponsored, which is interesting. Right, next up, MGM Resorts. They shut down their IT systems after a cyber attack. So MGM Resorts disclosed today that it's dealing with a cybersecurity issue that impacted some of its systems, including its main website, online reservations, in-casino services like ATMs, slot machines, and credit card machines. So they announced this on their profile page on X, Twitter. The company says it started an investigation immediately after detecting the issue and took prompt action to protect their systems and data, including shutting down certain systems. So they've obviously jumped straight into their incident response process, which is exactly as you'd hope, especially given that ATMs and card processing payments and their online reservations have all been affected. You know, that they're all handling money. So yeah, absolutely critical that they jumped on that straight away. So the outage apparently started Sunday night, and computer systems in the resorts are currently down. So the company then, as part of their process, switched to manual operations with ATMs and credit card machines on properties having been affected. So their main website's down, currently informing that customers can make hotel reservations at any of their destinations over the phone. So clearly they've dropped back to manual methods, which is great. They're managing to continue trading, but pretty much knocked them back to the Stone Age. If you are a member of MGM Rewards, then again, you're also affected, and you need to call member services between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. Pacific time if you're up in that neck of the woods. Next up, we have Google. They fixed another Chrome zero-day bug exploited in attacks. So they've released emergency security updates to fix the fourth Chrome zero-day vulnerability exploited in attacks since the start of the year. So this latest one is CVE 2023-4863, and they're aware that an exploit for it has been found in the wild, and they published a security advisory confirming that on Monday. New version is currently rolling out to users in the stable and extended stable channels, and it's estimated that it will reach the entire user base over the coming days or weeks. Chrome users are advised to upgrade their web browser to version 116.0.5845.187 for Mac and Linux, and on Windows it's version 116.0.5845.187 or 188 as soon as possible. as it patches the 4863 vulnerability on Windows, Mac, and Linux systems with its respective versions. So it looks like Chrome have actually aligned their version numbers. So the number you're looking for on the end is 5845.187. Okay. So the update was immediately available when we checked it this morning. So you should be able to go ahead and do that. The web browser, of course, will also check for new updates and automatically install them without requiring user interaction after a restart. Interestingly, the attack details aren't yet available, but we know it's caused by a WebP heap buffer overflow weakness, and the impact of that ranges from crashes to arbitrary code execution. So get yourself patched as soon as you can, please. Next, Facebook Messenger phishing wave targets 100,000 business accounts per week. So hackers use a massive network of fake and compromised Facebook accounts, and they do this to send out millions of Messenger phishing messages to target Facebook business accounts with password-stealing malware. They try to trick their targets into downloading a RAR or zip archive containing a downloader for a Python-based stealer that grabs cookies and passwords stored in the victim's browser. Guardio Labs report that researchers warn that roughly 1 out of 70 targeted accounts is ultimately compromised, translating to massive financial losses. The hackers start by sending messenger phishing messages to Facebook business accounts, pretending to be copyright violations or requests for more information about a product. And the attached archive file they send, it contains a batch file that, when executed, fetches a malware dropper from GitHub repositories to evade block lists and minimize distinctive traces. Along with the payload, which is called, the file name is actually project.py, the batch script also fetches a standalone Python environment required by the info stealing malware and adds persistence by setting the stealer binary to execute a system startup. And the project.py file features 5 layers of obfuscation, making it challenging for antivirus engines to catch the threat. Well, this sounds like a right pain. So for those businesses that do engage their customers on social media, such as Facebook Messenger, and obviously in this case, especially Facebook Messenger, do train your staff to be diligent about these things. There should be very little reason for a customer to be sending you a zip file, okay? I know that you won't necessarily have the tools to filter out malicious attachments and zip files in Messenger, but I would imagine that if you're in a customer services role, the only sorts of attachments you're normally going to get will be maybe the odd PDF, but mostly going to be JPEGs. Especially if you're selling a physical product that might break or might be damaged in transit, then normally it's photographic evidence is the sort of thing that you expect to see. So obviously advise your customer service centers, contact centers, whatever you have, customer service teams, not to open zip files in web chats. Not web chats, messenger chats, sorry. Right, next up, we have Microsoft are going to block third-party printer drivers in Windows Update. So Microsoft are basically shifting their printer driver strategy over the next few years. With the release of Windows 10 21H2, Windows offers inbox support for Mopria, I don't know how you pronounce that, compliant printer devices over network and USB interfaces via the Microsoft IPP class driver. This removes the need for print device manufacturers to provide their own installers, drivers, utilities, and so on. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so that's great, except Windows doesn't print at the best of times, half the time. So this is kind of going to be a kill or cure solution. And so the good news is that you end up standardized on Microsoft drivers. And if you've ever bought a printer from Brother, for instance, you'll know that drivers can be buggy as hell. So you might actually get your bit of paper out the machine after you hit the print button going forward. Downside I can see to this is that if you still work in an office, and I know many of you still do, you're never going to get to use your multifunction copiers ever again properly. You're just not. Have you ever tried printing to a Xerox machine with the wrong drivers or drivers that aren't 100% compatible? Yeah, you might have tried, but you've never printed anything useful. So the idea is that they're going to make printing more secure and with modern print systems. And in the near future, Windows will default to a new print mode that disables third-party drivers for printing. So starting in 2025, Microsoft are going to stop accepting driver submissions for print vendors, and no new third-party printer drivers will be published to Windows Update. 1 year later, in 2026, the company will modify the printer driver ranking to prioritize in-house Windows Internet Printing Protocol, that's IPP, class drivers. Third-party printer driver updates will no longer be delivered via Windows Update unless they provide security fixes beginning with 2027. So that's the next few years of print drivers. Now onto something a bit more interesting. Cuba ransomware group unleashes undetectable malware. So this is a very interesting one. So security researchers at Kaspersky have unveiled research into the activities of the notorious ransomware group known as Cuba. According to a new advisory published by Kaspersky earlier today, the notorious cyber criminal gang has been targeting organizations worldwide spanning various industries. The technical write-up shows that in December 2022, Kaspersky detected a suspicious incident on a client system. Yep, fine, nothing out of the ordinary there. This initial discovery unearthed 3 mysterious files that led to the activation of the Comar65 library, also referred to as Bughatch. So Bughatch is a backdoor, quite a sophisticated one actually, but it operates in process memory connecting to a C2 server to receive instructions. The malware can download software like Cobalt Strike Beacon and Metasploit, and its use of vulnerabilities in the Veeam backup software strongly suggests Cuba's involvement. Kaspersky investigation also revealed the presence of Russian-speaking members within the group, indicating by references to the Comar folder, which translates to mosquito in Russian. The group has further enhanced the malware's capabilities with additional modules, including one responsible for collecting and sending system information to a server via HTTP POST requests. Additionally, Kaspersky discovered new malware samples attributed to Cuba on VirusTotal, some of which have evaded detection by other security vendors. These samples represent updated versions of the Burnt Cigar malware, incorporating encrypted data to avoid antivirus detection. So Cuba, a single file ransomware strain, operates without additional libraries, making it challenging to detect. This Russian-speaking group targets various industries across North America, Europe, Oceania, and Asia, employing both public and proprietary tools. They continually update their toolkit and use tactics such as bring your own vulnerable driver. Notably, they manipulate compilation timestamps to mislead investigators. Despite their prolonged presence in the cybersecurity spotlight, Cuba remains dynamic and constantly refines its techniques, including data encryption and tailored attacks to extract sensitive information. In the report, Kaspersky emphasized the importance of staying informed and proactive against evolving cyber threats and encouraged organizations to follow best practices to safeguard against ransomware. So, that's your cyber briefing for this morning. We will post all of the links to these articles on the socials. Any questions or comments, please go ahead and drop us feedback. Not a problem at all. We'll be happy to have it. So as per usual, as the trendy YouTubers like to say, like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks very much indeed.